So, yeah, let me start over. We're gonna work on the goblins, the Goblin Gang. In case you don't know the figure, well, I'll show the full figure because I'm gonna show my reference photo. But it's like it's so many goblins, and they're all stacked on top of each other. And we're gonna do a really. I'm gonna talk about the lighting in a minute, but they're all coming out of the doorway, and I don't normally do a ton of sub-assemblies, but for something like this, where you have a lot of like elements that are overlaying over top of each other, like his hand goes right over his face. If his arms, he's got one arm that goes like this, and another one that comes out forward, so he's like doing this thing, and it would be very difficult to paint his face with his arms on, so leaving those separate. So this is going to be the project for the next, few weeks. But what I wanted to talk about before we actually start painting is when you do a sub-assembly like this, it's really important to have your lighting like figured out, right? So on this figure, I actually took photo reference for the lighting scheme I want, and we can talk about how I did it. So let me switch over to the tablet. So this is my photo reference. Okay, so on this one you can't see it, but he's actually got a little torch, so he's like hand is holding a torch like this. Is it showing? Hold on, it's not. Let me unplug and replug it back in because the screen's not updating. There we go. So he's got his hand and he's holding a torch like this, right? So the way I did this, so I've got, the idea is that he's holding a torch, so we're lighting, we are lighting the scene from above, right? We've got this strong firelight that's like this, right? And then we've got another like bluish kind of moonlight that's like soft and is maybe is coming in from like this way, right? So it lights up, but it's a softer light. You can see that the lighting that's coming in from the left is not casting like super hard shadows. You can see like the fingers here that they don't cast these like super deep shadows. Or on the goblin here, this is quite soft lighting. So this is supposed to be like, I don't know, a kind of cloud-covered, cloudy nighttime scene where they're breaking in, and he's got his torch, and it's creating this like very strong light from up here. So the way I did this was actually I took two photos. So this is the first photo. Good morning. So this is the first photo. This will be what is the moonlight, right? And then I take and I apply like a color over top. So something like this kind of bluish gray, right? I do something like this where you get this sort of nightimey sort of cold lighting effect. Okay. Hey, thanks for the follow. Chum Dab. And yes, sorry. Okay. So you have this cold lighting, and then the second photo was very sophisticatedly done by pulling the torch off the one model, and I took a photo with a lighter. Yes, I had to bend the door. So I had to heat it up and kind of bend it a little bit. So here you have this, the torch here, right? So this is where the torch would come from, and you get to see some of these little goblins that are in the background. And this creates this this kind of focal effect where I want people to look like kind of up here, right? Go away. It is totally supported. So let's talk about lighting real quick. Oh yeah, and then the step is them combine the two photos in Photoshop or whatever, overlay them on top of each other as like an add mode, and you can see where the lighting intersects and stuff, right? So I can clearly see this kind of like pink outline sort of shows me where the firelight stops and only the moonlight is going to be showing, right? So, all right, let's talk about the two differences. So here, when you're talking about lighting, right, there's this thing called the inverse square law. Okay, so light has fall off, right? So as a light source gets further away from you, it becomes less intense, right? So you have this more intense lighting, and the way it works is it actually falls off very quickly, right? So it does something like that, and then it kind of stays sort of similar the further away, right? So it's like it exponentially reduces until it's this kind of soft lighting. So when you're dealing with something like the sun, for example, it would be extremely bright if you were like, 100 miles from the sun. It would be insanely bright. Okay? But because we're literally like, I don't know, what is it? 100, like a million miles or something from the sun, 2 point some million miles away from the sun. The distance between, like, if we're talking about a little guy, let's make a new page so I can kind of draw this. Okay. So you have the sun in the sky. Okay, and it's emitting light rays, right? And those light rays, they fall off, right? 94.7 million. All right, so pretty far away. Okay, and the sun goes really 97 million miles. Or 94.7 million. 94.7. Okay. And they go really, really far. And you have little man here. And little man is standing down here. And he's like, hey, I love the sun. Okay. So his head is 94. Hold on. His head is 94.7 million miles away from the sun. Right? and his feet are 94.7 million and 5 feet. Or 5 foot, right? So what's the percentage difference between his feet and his head from the sun? 99.9999, right? And 99.9999 whatever. They're literally like percentage difference in distance from the sun is insanely negligible. So the fall off of the sun is, almost identical. But what if this wasn't the sun? What if it was... Okay, this wasn't the sun at all. What if it was a lamp? Okay. And there was a little light bulb right here. And this was like casting light down on him. Well, now his head is 5 feet away from the lamp. And his feet are 10 feet away from the lamp. So his top of his head and his feet are literally double, right? His feet are twice as far away from the lamp as his head is. And when you're dealing with a scale, a logarithmic scale, sorry to get into math and physics here, right? So if this far away is like 75% of the light, and his head is like 50% of the light, it would actually be even less. It would be like 30%. Even like right here would be 99%, right? Well, his feet, they're like 5%. Okay? But when you have the sun, and it's crazy bright, this might be 0.05% of the light, and his feet might be 0.04999999% of the light. Okay? Does that make sense? Is it... Am I losing everyone, or are people understanding this concept? So, if an object is in the scene making light, hola Sergio, like the torch. We've got right next to the torch, these rocks, right? They might be getting 90% of the light. His arm might be getting, his head might be getting 70% or even 50%. And then down here, you're at like 10%. Right? So as it gets further away, it falls off really fast. Okay? And it's in a sphere, right? So it's like every direction it goes, it does the same. It's not just straight up and down. Okay? And then you have the moon, right? So if this is the moon is also really far away. So the distance would be completely negligible, right? And actually the light of the moon, you have bounce light and all this other stuff. But the moon is super far, right? So is there going to be any fall off from the moon? Or is the moonlight going to, you know, just give the same amount of light across the whole surface? And it's really just based on like direction and volume at this point. Correct. The moon has no fall off. Right? So the OSL is the strongest light source in your setup. Then you have one key light torch and one global background. Yeah, I mean, that depends what you would consider the main light source. For me, the main light source is probably the moon in this scene. And then the, what's it called? It's like a fill light or something. I don't know. It's just another light source, right? The torch would just be another light source. But one has intense fall off, right? And the other one doesn't. You can see it in this picture. You can see that like down here is significantly dimmer than right here, right? So we have to use this reference to understand how much light we have in the scene. And we can adjust. Maybe I don't want it this bright. Maybe I actually want the blue a little darker. But I can do that on the model. At least this is telling me the main point here with this lighting reference is so I can see where the light interacts with each other. Right? Seun Can. Hello, thanks for the tier 6 months, tier 1. Appreciate it, man. Really appreciate it. Right, so I can see where the light interacts with each other. I have the lighting as a whole, right? So I can see how all the light interacts with all the figures, so I can see where there's going to be shadows and things underneath certain figures, because when I go to paint, let's go back to the whoop, no, not on me, on this, right? So when I go to do these guys, right, I've got him, and I've kind of zenithal primed it just to get an idea. CW, thank you, appreciate the prime. Right? So when I go to paint these guys, I know that like where the lighting direction and stuff is coming from on all of them, even though that the models are not like attached, right? This is going to help. And I have the picture like up on my computer screen, right? It's currently on my monitor, so I can look at it at any point. It's right here. There's chat, and there's the photo reference, right? So I can look at any time. I can look at my photo reference and see how the lighting is on this figure, right? And from here, the light coming in this way, I can see that like basically this whole side of the figure is dark. So I have to make sure this stays dark. No, I mean you maybe could zenithal the torchlight, but I think it would get confusing, and also you have to remember the fall off, and zenithal doesn't really fall off because like you have to be careful with the airbrush, right? What product do you use for your zenithal white here? It's actually a gray. It's just gray primer. It's just black and a gray primer. Right, because an airbrush just shoots white spray. You can't really control. You could control like in a in like an area, right? And you can make a blend you can blend out with the airbrush and like soften it, but it doesn't fall off like light does, right? The gray particles don't get less gray, like get blacker as it gets further away from the airbrush. It just shoots in a straight line, right? So we've got our little guy, and now we want to think about colors. Hi, Lucas. How are you? And then we are going to start to paint these guys, but we also know, like, based on the reference material, where some of the figures are going to interact with each other and stuff. So there'll be parts of this figure, like back here, right, where it's like his belt. This is like behind the doorway, so you won't even, none of this stuff you'll like ever even really see. Like, I'm going to paint it a little bit because there'll be some ambient light, very little ambient light, but there'd be some, and I'll paint it, but it's not going to be as much as like the light on his face. Okay? Painting some Warhammer. I'm painting some goblins, dude. Painting some gobos. All right, let's get some colors, and then we can talk about how the colors and stuff will interact. So, if we're doing green goblins, right? Well, we're gonna have to figure out what the general color of our moonlight is, right? To be honest, the moon is not really blue. Okay, it's more white. Okay, so the moon is more white than it is blue. In fact, it's kind of yellow, but because we have an extremely strong like orange light source in the scene. In the torch, we can use blue and like desaturated colors as a contrasting tone to create a more intense orange feeling, right? Because turquoise and blue are the complementary of orange. By using a pale blue light, it makes the orange feel more intensely orange. Okay, if I did a yellow light source and then did a yellow flame, it would just look like it just be, the whole thing would be yellow, right? So colors tend to wash out at nighttime, right? They get more desaturated, so we want to use more desaturated tones. Okay, so goblin skin, right? I probably want a kind of dark turquoisey color. Not too intense, maybe something like this. Normally I would just grab mine, right? But this is like super bluish. I can use something maybe a little more subtle. And then we've got kind of goblin skin tones, depending on what sort of how green we want them to be, right? We can go a little more blue, turquoisey, a little more greenish. Maybe something like this would work okay to start, but then it's going to get like really cooled off as I use more blue tones to create the moonlight, right? So maybe something like this to start, and then as I get into the warmer colors, I'll use more like vibrant greens or more orangey kind of tones. Ace of Sculpts, subscribe, tier 1, appreciate it. Welcome. Welcome. All right, any questions on any of this stuff so far? All right. Anything? Yes, no, maybe. like where you can buy these fantastic goblin models for yourself? Anybody want to know that? I don't know. I can vary it as I go, Christian. Like, I don't have to paint them all the same. Maybe these goblins, maybe these like more like wide-faced goblins have a slightly different skin tone, you know? The point is that like the light's going to be affecting so much of it that like we can't just go like, this is the recipe for painting goblin green and then do that, right? Because we have to adjust the colors based on the ambience. All right. So I have to make the consideration of like what color the goblin's skin is, and then change it, you know, as I go. All right, so Zenithal is pretty accurate actually to what we kind of want. So mostly I can kind of follow along here, and I might need a black also. This is probably too bright. This is not a box art. Okay, so I can mix some of the black, some of the turquoise, some of the base green together and create this like dark green shadow, right? This greenish blue. It looks black on camera, but it's not. Okay, so I could kind of follow along with the sculpt. And begin to just block in. I just posted the link, but if you want it again, here you go. Right, so I'm just following along with the shape. I'm kind of following the zenithal, but also following my reference material. And I begin to just like base coat some of the areas that will be very dark, right? These are my shadows. This is my shadow tone. I don't have much ambient light in this scene, so I don't need to adjust my shadows for the amount of ambient light. I'm really reducing the level of ambient light in the scene. What is that? Brian, hello. Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for the follow. Okay. So just on his face, I kind of block in where those are the absolute deepest shadows, okay? And maybe right here in his eye socket, he gets a little more deep shadow, okay? Then we want the midtones, right? So I'm going to take this shadow color I mixed, and we're going to create the light for his skin, okay? But we've got to include some of the moonlight green, and it's gonna turn quite gray. Like we want it quite gray. Okay, it looks green on here, but it's really not super green. Okay. And then we're gonna block in the areas of light on his skin. Okay, this is specifically the moonlight, right? I'm blocking in where the moonlight is hitting his face. And a bit of it, because it's coming from kind of forward on, quite a bit of it gets under his hood. Okay. And we get something like this. This is a commission, so it is not, I mean, it's for fun. It's like, I accepted it because I like the model, but it is for a collector. Okay, so we end up with something like this. Why's everything gotta be for something, you know? So we end up with some light like such, okay? Which looks crazy right now, but we're basically just separating it into light and shadow, right? So it looks like almost shadow from here, but that's because I've got this light gray zenithal, which is why we're gonna have to eliminate the light gray. Jarvin, thanks for the follow. We're gonna have to eliminate the light gray because it's gonna mess with our perception of how bright things are. But this will give you a kind of idea of where the lighting is coming in, right? And then based on the reference, I know this arm is basically in light here. But then it begins to soften and fall off on at his shoulder. So it's going to turn into this darker shadow tone. Well, we're going to add the torchlight too. Don't worry about that. Okay. So we have sort of this. I'll do this other arm too in a bit, but we have this kind of light, and then we got to think about like where this moonlight, right? Like the specular reflections of the moonlight. Okay. And the specular, everything has specularity, right? Not everything is just rough and flat. So we will have specular, or these are actual highlights. Okay, these are what highlights actually are, right? So we'll get like these specular lights reflecting in his skin. Right? Something like that. And he looks crazy for right now, because he is crazy. But not crazy in like, you know, the sense of how it's painted, right? So what I'm gonna do also while I'm here is I'm gonna black out his tongue a little bit just to kill some color, because it's very bright and it's distracting. So I'm just gonna put like a coat of this over his teeth real fast, just so they stop bothering me. And I can also outline his face a little. Okay, I'm not trying to like, I don't need to save the zenithal, right? The zenithal is purely there to like serve as a guide while I'm doing this like initial sketch, right? It's just to help. What are my top favorite? Which creatures are your favorite to paint? Maybe top 3. Big cats. Probably orcs, big cats, and I don't know. I don't know what else. Okay, so kind of end up with something like that, right? I mean, sure. But Warcraft creatures are just, other than the Tauren, which are minotaurs, they're just minotaurs with a Native American theme. They're just generic fantasy creatures, pretty much. Okay, so now what do we got to do? Right now we have to take and add like now we've got to start doing something with this firelight. Right, so we need something like some of that guy, maybe a little more orange. We'll grab something like this. War Machine super heavies? No. They're cool. But they're not my favorite thing to paint. Robots in general, I'm kind of not super into now. I'll grab some hot orange too. Something more fiery orange, right? Okay. And then we probably need like a actual yellow. Do something like that. Okay, so what else do we have? We have a light source that comes in from above and just barely, it like gets blocked by this hood and then hits on his head. So we got to take this light, and when colors add together, they mix, right? So we have to make this more green, right? So his skin needs to become more yellowish, more orangish, and brighter. Light can only get brighter as it overlays over top of each other, right? So where the light begins to hit his brow here, right? It hits his brow and nose, and the light becomes more intense from the firelight. Right? It's more yellowish. And then that's just going to build up. Right? So you have something like this kind of shape that goes across his face. Okay? And then when the two meet each other, is where we're going to get that like orangish kind of color. This very like camo green sort of thing. When this is also a very soft white blue, so we're gonna get this like more intense, like saturated green at the transition point. Right, and we probably have to push this, we're gonna have to push this further, but it gives like the idea of where that light is coming in. Okay, so like on here, his arm, other than part of his tricep, which does not get any firelight, like his arm up here is basically all lit by firelight. Okay, most of his hand is lit by firelight. Because the if we refer back to the reference, right, it's the light source is coming in from just above his arm. Actually, his arm is very close to the light source. the tops of his ears. Actually, his ears will be quite interesting as we go, because if we think about the light like coming from, it really comes like this, right? Because we can line it up and see like where it hits, right? It's something like that, right? So we have to consider like the back of the model too, like where all this. So this is probably going to hit a lot of his like back of his body here. Top of this hand. We can't just paint what we see in the photo, because we have to make the consideration that this is a three-dimensional object, right? So if the light is coming in from this way, right, we have to adjust it accordingly so that the light is coming in like this, and we can imagine that the camera is the light source, right? And all of this stuff back here, except where the other goblin is laying on his back, will get hit, and that's where the light will come in. And everyone understands this perfectly, and I don't need to explain it any further, right? Right? Now, something interesting is this arm doesn't get a lot of light from the moonlight, at least from this side, right? Because if the light's coming in like this from the moonlight, where can it kind of see? It does see a bit up here, right? But down here it doesn't get a lot, so the color of the shadows will change. But this will basically be all dark. And then maybe a little bit of light gets onto his ribs back here, but the doorway will block quite a bit of it, so. Most of this will be in shadow. You don't want to use red when you get closest to the torch. Actually, it becomes more yellow, right? Fire is like yellow to orange. In fact, I'm not going to use any red. It's more orangish. So I will make adjustments for that, right? So as the light begins to fall off, it becomes more yellow or more orange. Fire isn't really red. It's a dark. It turns into like a dark orange and becomes like brick colored. But the only thing that would be brick colored would be things that are like neutral. So things like when we go to do the stones on the background, those sort of things will be like very orangish toned. So some of the rocks will be quite blue, and then some of them will be more orange. But we're going to have to introduce color into the skin and all these other little nuances, right? Right now, we just want to establish the lighting. Like, this is the most important thing at the moment, is to just get the lighting right. If we can get the lighting right, that'll help a lot. Right, it might seem rough right now, but the whole it's all part of the plan. We can revise later, but we just need to get the kind of tones right and the placement right, and then we can adjust things. Right, adjust and refine. Okay. So, looking at him now, do I like the greenish mid-tone of his skin? Maybe not. Maybe I actually want to take some of the skin tone. Maybe I want to grab something like this and use some of the orange to desaturate it a little bit, just to make it slightly more brownish. So I can make it slightly more brown, right? And then when I add the blue to it, what's it going to do? It's going to turn even more gray. Right, so something like this. Maybe I don't want his skin to be super green. Right. And the difference is subtle. Right, it's not a huge difference, but it will change his appearance a little bit, and it might help make that like feel a little colder. And so it's strange that by actually desaturating the green, it's going to make his skin like desaturating with orange makes it feel colder, but by reducing the intensity of the green, it makes the yellow parts of his skin feel like more intensely green. Yeah, it's just a weird color theory thing. We make this one less cold, but overall it feels more cold in comparison due to color saturation. All right. So this gives me like the rough sketch. Now I've got to start and blend these together, right? So I'm going to start to like introduce these secondary tones, right? These bridge tones. And begin to blend, in air quotes, right? I'm just softening the transitions. And introducing a little more form and shape to the figure. Oh, sorry, I'm off camera. Yeah, Jackson, that's exactly right. Like, you're creating contrast through saturation, right? So if you use a lot of desaturated colors, a lot of grays, and then you put in one super saturated color, it's going to make that one saturated color feel like really intense. All right, so I'm just continuing to soften these out, finding these little, now as I can kind of start to like pick out, before I wasn't picking out these little micro volumes, now I'm starting to focus some on the smaller volumes of the face, right? And I'm going to have to like start outlining things. There's a lot of like really small details on these models. There's quite a lot of little subtle volumes and things. Probably would also help to just go ahead and like black out the eyes. Right, get some of these smaller wrinkles and such. Get some of the details into his face. Okay. So we actually will do this thing called subsurface scattering when I go to do the ears, which is like where the light passes through the ear. If you can, let's see if I can do it. See if I can do it with my phone and a flashlight. Hold on, let me get my hair out of the way. Ugh. Turn my head this way, right? Can you guys see? If I do this, right? Here, I'll change cameras. Right? That's behind my ear, right? And you can see how, like, orangey red it becomes, like, through my ear. Right? Because of the thin skin. Okay? So this is, like, ridiculously close, but it happens from It happens from further away too. It's like, you know, it's like not right on my ear, but yeah. So we're gonna do that with him. Where his ears would look thinnest. But that's like a small detail, and we'll get to that. I just wanted to bring it up if you're wondering why I'm not putting the colder tones on the front of his ears yet, because we're going to be working with that thin skin. There's a lot of little subtlety and nuance that. Is that a huge web palette? I mean, it's the size of like a A4 sheet. It's the Redgrass XL, Studio XL. All right. Okay, so that might be just like the like super rough, right? This is like crazy rough sketch of just like where the lighting goes, you know? We still gotta like base coat some things properly and get things all worked out, but it gives us a very general idea of the lighting, right? This can basically be all black because it's all covered. Black-ish, you know, it's like this dark turquoise green. Any questions? Questions for me? Questions from the audience? Do I have a favorite WoW book? Like novel? I've never read any of the WoW novels. Just played the game. I just play the games. Alright, so super deep in his ears will be like the dark, basically black. Right, like all the way at the bottom. The light doesn't get like down in there. Even passing through the thin parts of his ear. The thin parts of his ear are like up here at the corners. I've never heard anything particularly good about the World of Warcraft novelization. But if I'm wrong, feel free to tell me. If there's like a good one. Arthas, is it about like the calling of Stratholme and stuff? Warcraft 3 is very good. I was not into the like multiplayer or anything. Wasn't really my thing. But I did enjoy the story mode. Never was a RTS guy. Too much macro managing. I'm a player that handles like one character way better. Okay. So there's some parts like down inside, like stuff like this. We probably just want to make black because it's like super deep. Yeah, so when you have subsurface scattering, you basically have a thin object, right? And then the light passes through that object, like a material that is like your skin is not 100%, opaque. That's why you can see the like veins in your skin, right? Because you're seeing through the skin and you're seeing the veins underneath, okay? So when you have subsurface scattering, like when light passes through your ear, okay, the light goes through and then it changes based on the coloration of your ear. Now the question is, the reason it turns super orange like that is because of all the blood vessels and things that are in your ear, so, or in your skin, right? And it turns very reddish. Okay. We can do this too. Here's another one for you. Hey kids, don't do this at home. Don't put your phone in your mouth. Gross. Right? But the light the light passes through the skin and it turns like very reddish, right? No, the mouth was funnier. So it passed through the skin. Now, so what happens? The question is, what does goblin skin do? Right? Goblin skin is green, but it's green, right? Like, it's not so far off from like human skin that you're like, it's not like, it's not green like this, right? This is green. It's its own color, right? Still a bit like desaturated and things. Okay, it's more grayish. Now the question is, what color blood do goblins have? Okay, because that's going to mean like what color are the blood vessels and everything, right? And based on the fact that most people paint goblins with like reddish lips and a reddish nose, right? Areas that you typically have like thinner skin and you have more blood vessels. Things like knuckles and stuff, people tend to paint very reddish on goblins. You could probably be led to assume that goblins also are red-blooded, right? So when the light passes through his ears, it's going to turn very pinkish. Okay, so we've been talking for a while. I'm going to take a quick, I'm going to step away real quick, grab a drink and stuff, and I will be back in like, I don't know, 5 minutes or something. All right, see you soon. Why do you guys always raid in during my breaks? Always raiding in during my breaks. Welcome everyone. Hi, hello, how you doing? How's everyone doing? We're working on some goblins. All right, so what color do we want to do his hood? If you said red, you're correct. But we have to think about the red in terms of the lighting, right? We can't just paint it red. That doesn't work. Okay, so we've got the cold moonlight coming from the front and the warm firelight coming from above. So what is that going to do to his hood, right? Well, for one, it means his hood is going to be mostly more saturated because yellow plus red is more orangish, right? So we're going to have a more warm reddish orange light from above. It's going to be more saturated, right? This intense firelight happening. Okay. Well, this one's orange. This is orange. This is red. So we're using a red in the mixture. Okay. So he's got his bright red hood. I want to think about the direction the lighting is coming in, right? The torch is above his head. It's a different goblin holding the torch. For you guys just joining, this is a model with a lot of parts. And Marco. What hell? Hello, hello. All right, we'll probably hit back on the how was the rest of your stream? How's everyone doing? Disco, hi. All the new people coming in, welcome. So, we got the strong red light coming from above, but what do we have to do to the red to make it work for the moonlight, right? We've got to desaturate it. Yeah. So we end up more with this like purpley wine red. Yeah. So in the cold areas, we're going to have this much more purple, kind of cold, desaturated wine red that turns, and then where the torch is, it's going to be much more this intense fiery orange red, right? Real quick, I'll show you guys for all the people just joining in. I will show you the reference material that we're working with here. So we're going for a very specific lighting scheme for this guy, or for these guys. I'll show you what the whole model looks like. So this is what we're aiming for, right? So we've got the little goblin up top. This guy right here. Hello. He's actually like holding a torch that I didn't have on in the picture. So he's holding a torch above his head, and then we've got this outdoor like moonlight effect on the front of the figure. Okay, so we're working with like this cold lighting mixed with this very intense like saturated firelight from above. Okay, so that's kind of the idea. Nuddle Milk, Nafrayu, Max Sibs. Hello, welcome everyone. And if you're curious how I made that photo, well, let me turn the, oh no, can I go back? I cannot, hold on, I can go and look at just my photos real quick. Photos? Photos. So here's one of the pictures, right? This was taken, I took a picture literally with a lighter, okay, to get the firelight, okay, the torch light. This is what we're doing here. And then I took this photo, okay, and then I combined them together to make this photo. So I just used a tripod with two different lighting setups to take two separate photos. One for the firelight pass, one for the moonlight. And then combining the two. Cool. All right. So we are combining these two together on the figure. to create this effect, we have to really be considerate of our color choices, how we saturate and adjust the colors depending on which light is like dominating the scene. Eric, was that your art you were just showing on Instagram? No, what? No, that's just reference photos for this figure I'm painting. Chuck Canada, thanks for following, man. Appreciate it. Okay, so because of that, all of the cold light and shadow areas are going to have to be this more dark wine desaturated red, and all of the firelight areas have to be more intense. You have to think about the color of the light and how it's going to affect the object that you're painting, right? So what is firelight going to do to a red object? I mean, it's just basically going to stay red, right? In fact, I can show you. Let's look. Let's test my. Let's turn the light off. Huh? Oh, it's dark in here. What are we gonna do? Right? That's a red bottle of paint. Huh? What color is it? It's red. Right? Let's take a green bottle. Let's take a green bottle of paint. Could barely even focus. What color is it? Is it green? Not really. Certainly not as true to the color as the red is, right? Look, the green is darker than the red is. But when I turn the light back on, this green is just as bright as that red is. Maybe even slightly brighter looking. So you have to be really considerate of what color you're painting at the time. Exactly, Leaf. You guys have, and I know Marco talks about this if you're just joining in, right? I'm sure Marco would say the same thing. You have to train your observational skills. Okay, it's super important. You cannot make assumptions on how light interacts and how colors affect each other, because light is not pigment. Okay, they don't mix. Light and pigment do not mix the same. right? And the best way to train your observational skills is to just use reference, right? And if you have to make your own reference, sometimes do it. Okay, you want to know what something looks like under a blue light? Just make your phone glow blue, right? There's actually, I don't have one on my phone, but there are apps for your phone where you can, like flashlight apps where you can just make the screen glow whatever color you want it to. So if you want to know what a bright blue light looks like on a red object, just make your phone glow bright blue and then shine it on a red object, right? Right, so now by making this part of his hood more wine red, we pull out some of the color. And we begin to have this double interaction between the very desaturated moonlight and the more saturated firelight, right? Now, will his hood become super bright orange, like super yellow because of the flame? No. Did you see bright yellow in the bottle when we did that? I don't think you did. So maybe it'll shift to like this orangish tone, right? But it's not going to turn like bright yellow. No, I have no like specific plans. I mean, I know things are leather, and honestly, like there's not a lot of color on this model. It's like there are a couple guys wearing some clothes, some hoods and things, but I'm just using the red because it's eye-catching. And it's a strong complementary color to the green of his skin. Exactly. Zeltenis, hello, welcome. Thanks for following. Appreciate it. Welcome to the stream. Okay. So are we going for like a perfect interpretation at this point? No, we're just putting some color down so we can get an idea. Okay. So like on his shoulder, he's got a couple little plates here, but it's mostly going to be leather, right? Actually, is the whole thing, is that part leather? I'll probably do that part leather. And then the upper part, these little things will be metallic. Right, so for leather, what do we need for a leather, right? Okay, we need a brown, right? Does that make sense? We need brown to do leather? Yeah? Could we mix a brown with what we have? Sure. Definitely could. Or I could just grab a brown, right? And use that as a starting point to create, the color that I'm looking for. See you, Marco. Thanks for the raid. By the way, guys, if you haven't seen both Marco and my masterclass, tickets are on sale for LVO in January. So if you're interested in taking a workshop with either one of us, check it out. Check it out. Where again? LVO, Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Open. It is a show. Miniatures. That's in the wrong shade of brown. Oh, I need. Where the heck did it go? I think my roommate took it. Yeah. Boom, brown, right? So we got a brown. Is this the correct color brown though? Major Asnable, how are you, sir? Right, guys. Is this the correct? Look, let's look at this brown. I just had 2 workshops in the UK. I was literally just there. I was there like a few weeks ago. We did this guy. I did this guy while I was in Manchester, but I will be back. Well, you want to see another model? How about this guy? He's back. What happens in those classes? I teach people to do this. Anyways. Well, anyway. Some figures. Really, I teach people to think a lot about color and light and how they affect each other and how to paint ambience and blah 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 blah. Blah 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 blah. Alright, so. Alright, chat. Is this the right color brown for either of the things I want to work on, right? What's up with this brown? Okay? No. All right. So what do I need to do to it? Okay? If I want to paint it in the moonlight, what do I got to do? Hey, yeah, there we go. Ginger beef. I gotta add some of my blue, right? I gotta desaturate it. Maybe a little black, right? So what's that gonna do? It's gonna gray it out, right? It's gonna make it. It's hard to see on camera, but because they're both very dark. But like this is different than that, right? Right. So if I want to make this part of his shoulder bluish brown, right, for the cold areas. Okay. And it's fine if I paint over the metal right now, because I've got to go back and do it anyways. In fact, it's probably better I do, so that the white or the like light gray doesn't distract. Yeah, Defiant, but you're getting it. You guys are smart. Right, so I got to add blue. Okay. And then up here, where the light starts to wrap over, right? What's going to happen? It's going to start to turn more into this brown, right? It's going to start to get a little more towards the actual color brown. And then as it gets to the top of his shoulder, where the firelight starts to come in, what do I have to do? Right, I gotta warm it up. Right? Gotta add more orange. Okay. So you get this like cold leather on the bottom, and then this more warm leather on the top. It's the same. It's the same on everything. Don't overcomplicate it, you know? Right? How about down here where it's like just almost straight up? It's so dark underneath, right? Probably won't even be able to see this at all, right? Just black, dude. Just make it black. Can't see any of these parts. This is all hidden in the doorway and stuff. The torchlight can't reach here. Can't even really see it on the model once it's assembled. I mean, we'll add a little bit of definition to it just so that it's not just base coated. Well, the absence of light is an interesting concept because we do have like bounce lights, and there is a small amount of ambient light. Even at nighttime, if the moon's up, you have some ambient light. That's why you can see when you go outside, right? The shadows aren't pure black; they're very, very dark, but they're not pure black. So, but the concept, like the same. The concept applies, right? So I don't know what color I want to paint his pants. They don't really matter. So I can kind of just do them really dark. Hey, we've got some more leather and stuff over here, but you know, maybe he's got brown pants on. Brownish. I could always adjust the color later slightly in one way or another, but gives me a starting point. to just say like, yeah, there's some brown. Maybe they're like a lighter khaki brown. Took a lesson with Monty. Right. So, same over here, right? This is all whatever. Maybe it's dark, different leathers and things, but just trying to I'm like, this is not important that this is like refined or anything at this stage. It's just distracting, so I just get rid of it, right? I know what the lighting angle and stuff is now, so I don't have to worry about that. Okay. So we play around with it, get all the rough shapes in, and then we can begin to like refine, right? So now, based on metal parts, I'm not too worried about. Where all have I done workshops? Oh, dude, I don't know. All over the place. I've got one in Las Vegas this weekend. I hope to be in Canada, Montreal, and Edmonton next year. Well, I'll be there. That's the plan. Not for a little while. But, you know, if you join the Discord, which, by the way, the link for the Discord is like right down there somewhere. Should be down there. If you join the Discord, there's announcements channel, and I will announce when all the workshop tickets and stuff go on sale. So, what level of painting do I need? You don't need any specific level of painting. I had a dude take my workshop he'd never painted human skin before. He had literally only ever painted Necrons, and he did fine. Now, it does cover some advanced topics. You might struggle with like some blending and things, but as far as long as you don't get too frustrated, like you'll understand some of the technical aspects, or the more theoretical aspects, and the technical aspects are things you have to work on, you know? It's in the Discord, actually. If you join the Discord, it's in the current project channel. You can check it out in there. All three of them are. I feel my phone buzzing a lot, so I'm assuming a bunch of people are joining the Discord right now. Is this piece for fun? Of course it's for fun. It is very fun. This piece is for a collector. I was asked to paint this by a collector like pretty much immediately when it came out. When Joaquin showed it, he's been waiting some time for it to be delivered and for me to get around to painting it. So we're getting around to it. My verification needs a password? Really? What? Really? I'm no Discord expert. I was like, I didn't think it did. Okay, so, right, so what are we doing with the skin? So we got to take some of the red and some of this green skin, and look what happens when we mix them together, right? It turns pretty gray, but it feels greenish, or it feels reddish, right? It's not gray in the same sense of like, let's look at this, right? It is desaturated, but it's like this desaturated orangish color. It's almost quite similar if we just took this and put it right next to it, right? And added a little white, right? They're quite similar. Okay. Right. It's not like, right? That's gray. It's graying in the sense that it's desaturating. So where his ear is really thin, almost like doing a wash, I can create some of this like orangish tone. Right where the light is gonna like shine through his ear. Now, if I want to make his skin slightly more yellowish, because I like a kind of yellowish goblin, I need to add a little bit of color back to the midtones. Okay, when I say yellowish, I mean like a yellowish green, like this camo green, right? So I can glaze some of that color in where we've lost a lot of it, right? This like these like khaki camo browny greens. I can get some of that color back in to the midtones, and then I can make adjustments . And it'll make the difference in the two light sources a little more subtle. Right, because we're not dealing with... Is a flame, like, is a candle light, like, actually orange? Or is it more like a yellowish white, right? Is the moon actually like blue? No, it's like a grayish white, like we consider it a cold light because the sun is very warm, and by comparison the moon feels cold. Okay. So we can adjust accordingly to if we need a bit, get out of here, hair. If we need a bit more color. Okay, so if we want to get him slightly closer to this, he's still not like this up here, right? He's not this like lime greeny kind of color, but the two are slightly closer together. Okay, they start to feel more like one actual color. So tennis, you could do that. I mean, a movie like Underworld is probably a great reference for something like that, you know? Or I did do a video on painting a vampire, so you could go watch that video if you want. Self-plug. Check out the YouTube channel. You can watch all of the previous streams. Yes. This is this sculpt. They're busting down the door. 'Cause busting makes me feel good. How does adding gray compare to adding the complementary color for desaturation? Well, typically you have to add a lot more gray. And this would get really heavy into like how pigments actually work. Because really if you mix two pure pigments together, you actually get two complementary pigments, and they're pure pigments. Normally you end up with what's called a chromatic black. So it's not quite the same. If you're referring to a neutral gray of like just mixing black and white pigment together, that's different. And And sometimes you might end up with the result where you have like that neutral gray has too much opacity to it for like the effect that you're going for, because black and white pigments tend to be very opaque. Goblin boy, he's a gobby boy. Alright, so now what do I want to do? I want to take some of this, I want to start adding some of this to his skin. Okay, and that means like maybe getting more of this like brownish color. But I want to start like adjusting the kind of tonality on his nose, just to like get some color down, and like his lips are going to be a different color. Right, but I can't go too intense with it, because if I go too intense, it looks out of place for the color we're kind of going for. So here I could grab like this cold red that I kind of made and mix that with the green. So you could see now, just by me doing this, look how clownish his lips look, because they're like too orange, right, for the lighting that he's in. Okay. So we have to adjust it. Right? We don't want him to look like the Joker. I mean, maybe we do, but I don't. Right? So I have to adjust that color to get it to the right shade of like reddish brown to feel like his lips are slightly reddish, you know? Don't want him to actually have red lips. I mean, I don't want it to look like lipstick. See you, Christian. See you, Lucas. Hi, Richard. Richard shows up. That's why people are leaving. That makes sense. Yeah, man, Lucas likes to hang out with us. Lucas is a good guy. Yeah, so he's got like a moonlight and then there's a torchlight. So there's another goblin that's above him. I'll grab it. Hold on, so you guys can see, so I can reference it easier. 1 second. there's another little goblin that goes on his back. It's hard to line up, but he goes like just above him, like this, and he's holding a torch. He's like, fire. He actually like presses flat against his back. Oh, he's got a lot of buddies. He's got 2 more buddies here. He's like smushing this guy's head down. It's like 20 goblins or something when you're done painting this model. Now, most of them are like just half the faces like sticking out of the background that you can barely see. But he's the boss. You can tell he's the boss goblin because he's got the biggest grin on his face. There you go, Major Reasonable. One of the best sculptures, I think, released in years. Potential bounce light of the door. Not really. See, I'm almost using like a orangish color now. It's like an orangish yellow, and it still works as like a warm green. As long as you get things in context with each other, you can play with color so much. Is this one of Lucas? No, this is Joaquin. Joaquin, same guy that did this bust, actually. Dropping paint on the floor. Same guy who did this. Same sculptor. In your reference, it gives a nice rim light. What are we talking about? Gives a nice rim light on what? Who's that? Oh, Kinushka. Thanks for the 100 bits. And Forsaken. Appreciate it. Contours the other side of his face. Which side of his face are we talking about? Are we talking about this side? Or this side? Because the door's on this side, so I assume you're talking about the light on this side of his face. Well, this is the moon. This is the moonlight. Right? So the moonlight is actually coming in more from this side. This is why this side of his face is supposed to be more in shadow than this side. I might actually have to adjust some of the shadows. But this is, like I said, we're only at a sketch right now. This is, because I've been talking a lot, I would normally be probably painting faster than this. Right now, we are just dealing with the kind of rough shape of his face. Like in the reference, this is all quite dark here. I got the resin. I didn't know. Is there an STL for this? Did he release the STL? I don't know if he did for this one. This one's like a little fancier. I know he sold a good amount of these. I know he normally does STLs, but I think this one might have been like a more special sculpt. It reminds me of a Magic like this sculpt could literally be a Magic the Gathering card. Like if you put a border around it, which would actually be pretty cool because it's flat in the back, you could make it look like easily make it look like a 3-dimensional Magic the Gathering card, which actually I will show you guys in a second. The base, the background, and if you are interested in buying one, or if you already own the model, you can pick up these picture frame. Ooh, that is very bright. Sorry. You can pick up 4x6 picture frame from like Michael's or, you know, Walgreens or whatever. And it fits like really nicely into the picture frame. So I'm going to mount it on the picture frame. Obviously, you got to take the plastic like sheet out, but I'll mount it on a black cardstock background, and they'll be like coming out of the picture frame. And a 4x6 is like really a good size for these guys. So, anyways. Who's that? 9 Bebop. Hello. Welcome. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate it. Now, for me, it's a really nice, I think, way to display these guys. And because the back of the scene is like completely flat, like there's really no reason to not like to show the back at all. It is literally just flat on the back, right? So I mean, you could put it on like a backdrop plinth, but I don't think this model needs a backdrop because the sculpt itself kind of functions as the backdrop. Good night, Jet. All right. Thanks, King. I'm just going to call you King. Okay. Every Swinson model comes complete with his official DNA. Yeah, you probably could. You don't want to know what I varnished them with. I gotta be able to see. There's too many small details on the face that I can no longer see without the glasses. This is when we get into very delicate volumes and things. I actually got a little something, little nub of dry paint here. We're going to scratch off. Little dot, annoying little dots. Get out of here, dust or whatever you are. All right, I got it. How do you handle like textured skin like that, or specifically like little wrinkles? Because if you want to see this guy like super close up, you can kind of see how I did his little wrinkles. It's like about subtlety, right? So you kind of paint the overall shape, and then you sort of blend by like just painting lines, right? It's almost like kind of like doing hair, but you're painting the skin in a way that you kind of like paint the wrinkles and stuff. What can help here to kind of just like smooth things out is if I sort of apply a wash and then build back up. I kind of know where the light is supposed to be now, so I can kind of make an adjustment now that I can see some of these small shapes. Let me get them on screen. Could call it a wash, a glaze, whatever, but I want to like redefine some of these shapes. Because like right here, he's got this super tiny like wrinkle between his lip and his smile lines. The nasal labial fold. I want to mix like I want to just get like a good mix of base goblin skin tone, right? So if this is his like, if he was in white light, what color would he be? He'd be like this color, right? And then I can make the adjustment to the darker, and then add some of the white for the light, and get that nice mid-tone that I'm looking for. He has some extremely sharp details. Or like sunken details. Lots of little recesses and things. So we have to try and push the paint like into those corners to really start to like define some of these shapes really well. Sorry if I'm going off screen at all. Maybe I should zoom out a little bit. Part-time nobody, hello. He's a very awkward figure to hold because of the fact that I normally would hold the handle and paint him like this, right? But because he like comes out of the base like straight on, it's an unusual way to hold the model. Right, so always just like I'm trying to establish the like the overall shapes first, and then I move to these like these small refinements, right? Now I'm like blending and shaping and picking out these little like micro details. The cool thing, I don't know if he still does it on all of them, but he actually comes with some alternate parts, so you don't have to do the torch. You can have the goblin on top. If you want to do like a less complex lighting scheme, you can do the goblin on top with a knife. You can also he comes with an alternate head, I think. Don't quote me on this. You'd have to check the website to see if they still come with the special parts. It may have only been the like initial pre-order. But mine came with like a little a goggled version, and he had a little grenade thing in his hand. And then what was the other piece? Yeah, okay, he still comes with it. Yeah. So there's a goggled head with a little grenade, and then this goblin can have a knife in his hand if you don't want to paint the torch. Oh, okay. Was it pre-orders only? I don't know. This is why I said don't quote me, because don't get mad at Joaquin if you buy it now and it doesn't come with the alternate parts. Like Eric said, it came with the stuff. Why you scamming me, bro? Okay, making little adjustments here and there. So this is like when it really slows down, right? I don't even want to know what song you're thinking. Really, really small marks and lines and things to make tiny adjustments. Do you guys actually find this part of watching me do the painting process fun? Like, I feel like this is the boring part. This would be the boring part to watch for me. Is like, okay, everybody, I explained the theory. Now watch me blend for 3 hours. It's very exciting. Okay, well, I'm glad that this part is interesting, at least. Dissociated dummy, hello, thanks for following, welcome. Let's see here. Yeah, for me, this is like, I don't know. This is just me making marks, you know? And like, I could explain every little brushstroke, but I don't think that would be particularly exciting either. All right, so let me do something real quick. So I want you guys to kind of see something. So if we take, we can do this. How do I do this? Duplicate. We're gonna call this 8. We're gonna call this B and W. We're gonna make a new scene in OBS. And on this scene, filter, add filter, color correction, negative saturation. All right, here we go. If we can do this now. Ha ha ha. Okay, so you should be able to see that like the light on his nose now disappears. Right? So I go like this, you lose the like the torchlight on his face. Okay? But you can see that the cloak has very similar hues. Okay? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that that light, right? So the value is the same. Right? Hue is different. Value is the same. So we want to push, if we're going based off the reference photo, the light on his nose should be brighter, right? Because it is, you can only add light, right? Lights can only add together. So that means that where the light of the torch, because underneath this torchlight would be still getting moonlight, right? So where the two stack on top of each other, we need to make sure that the light on his face is actually brighter. Right, so I'm going to keep pushing this light more until it's actually brighter on top. Okay? Because the torchlight adds with the moonlight, and they enhance each other. Light is additive. You cannot make things darker by shining another light source on it. Okay, you can only make it brighter. So now what do you think will happen? Right? If I go back to the black and white. You can see that it actually looks brighter now on that like T shape of his bridge, right? But it's still brighter than the chin, which means it's still not quite right, but it is closer, right? So either the chin's too dark, which I don't think it is, or the light source is still not quite bright enough. Hello. Dodge, thanks for the prime. I appreciate it. How are you, man? How you doing? Okay. Now what do you think will happen? Yeah, it's almost a nice yellow, right? Well, in in our reference photo, it's quite bright. Okay, see? But it's not. It's not a white, right? Like when you look at it under this, you can see that it is not in fact white. Right? So it should look brighter on here now. Cool? Makes sense? All right. I'm good. Well, guys, I think that's about as much theory and stuff as I can give you tonight. I'm gonna call it here. If you haven't, check out the YouTube videos. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you made it 3 hours into the video, I appreciate you. Yeah,